Hello my friends and welcome. On this channel I sometimes speak about American politics and politics in general because it influences Ukraine, especially with yesterday's visit of President Volodymyr Zelensky to Washington, D.C., where he met with Donald Trump and they discussed the possible military support of Ukraine even with tomahawks. And I would say that the meeting was, let's say, honestly not okay for Ukrainian side and for democracy in general. Donald Trump refused to give Ukraine the long-range weaponry because the day before, Putin called Donald Trump and brainwashed him. He resetted his program, completely erasing the previous setting done by Zelensky, and there was no pro-Ukrainian rhetoric from Donald Trump any longer in yesterday's meeting. Well, for me the story with tomahawks was understandable from the very beginning, that the chance for them to be supplied by the current White House administration to Ukraine is pretty much low. As I say to you, if that deal happened, I would be surprised, probably the most surprised in my entire life about some sort of the event. And as expected, Ukraine obtained refusal. Then Zelensky was asked about those Tomahawk missiles. He replied that he is realistic about it. Plus, he also added that White House and Donald Trump, they don't want to escalate. So similar story with the previous White House administration. You might recall the National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan, who really pushed Joe Biden not to escalate and not to give Ukraine permission to use ATACMS missiles, which have already been supplied. They were afraid that those missiles could be used on Russian territory and Russia may try to do something against democratic states and NATO, but it doesn't really matter for Russia. Plus, Putin himself stated about tomahawks that they are not the problem for Russia, that Russia may modernize the air defense systems and shut down those tomahawks. So far, he has not proclaimed any sort of the threats for Western countries which could be connected to delivery of the tomahawks. But Putin is afraid because he understands the capabilities of Ukraine if it obtains tomahawk missiles. If Ukraine, just with the help of the drones for the last few months, was capable to eliminate 40% of the Russian refinery capabilities. And now Russia has to spend the money to purchase fuel from neighboring countries. Fuel station purchasing fuel from other countries. It is nonsense, but it is happening. Well, here guys, I said something about the previous White House administration, some negative things, with those permissions, but in general there was way bigger support of Ukraine, also direct military help compared to Donald Trump's administration. It is all understandable. Donald Trump just wants to finish this war in any possible sort of the way. The occupation of Ukraine is one of those acceptable ways for Donald Trump. He just wants to stop killing, at least till the end of his presidency term. He doesn't accept Ukraine as an ally. But for Joe Biden, Ukraine was a fellow friendly state. What we have right now is totally upside down, and what Donald Trump is doing, he is now supporting Russia mostly. I mean, not directly with some sort of the financial or military support, but there are no sanctions applied on Russia, plus the long-range weapons delivery was cancelled for now. And also Donald Trump just follows Putin demands every time. There were already multiple of the cases that Donald Trump escalated towards Russia, but each time there was either Witkov's visit to Moscow or Putin calls to Donald Trump, and after it, the program reset. Donald Trump is turning to the other side. Donny cannot stick to a single vector, and it really shows his incompetence. Putin understands that, and Putin just mastered his manipulation of Donny. Everyone sees that. American press, social media, if you open pages, even some of the MAGA supporters, they are now questioning Donald Trump about his misaction in this case. Why did you say one thing and then totally opposite the next day? But it seems like Donny likes to be played like that, and he doesn't understand what is happening. Well, in this video I don't really want to play the speeches of Donald Trump especially, or Zelensky, because it doesn't really matter. Only actions should be evaluated by us to understand the next steps of the White House administration. Well, Donald Trump again showed himself unprofessionally. Well, I'm gonna touch some of the things which were discussed, but without real quotes or playing those videos, because he is just annoying, and yesterday he even used the word fuck. Then he answered the question to one of the journalists, which I think is absolutely inappropriate for the politician of this high level of the biggest democracy probably, yeah, in the world. Biggest economy at least, and military power, the United States of America. Beautiful country, but yeah, people elected this leader, which is not helping democracy to withstand the threats coming from autocracies. What I may quote here is just his Truth Social post, because it shows how delusional Donald Trump really is. He posted that after the meeting with Zelensky. The meeting with President Volodymyr Zelensky of Ukraine was very interesting and cordial, but I told him, as I likewise strongly suggested to President Putin, that it is time to stop the killing and make a deal. Enough blood has been shed, with property lines being defined by war and guts. They should stop where they are. Let both claim victory. Let history decide. No more shooting, no more deaths, no more vast and unsustainable sums of money spent. And here's the most important part of this message, of course. This is the war that would have never started if I were president. Thousands of people being slaughtered each and every week. No more. Go home to your families in peace. And just for you to understand how delusional this message really is, if Ukraine stops killing, stop fighting, in this case, yeah, he just says stop killing. It means that Russia would just penetrate Ukrainian defense lines and occupy Ukraine. So Ukraine has to defend itself. It's not that Ukraine is an aggressive country. No, Ukraine is being attacked and it has the right to defend its own territory. Russia is attacking. If you check out the military map from the yesterday's analysis, you may see the Russian convoys and Russian vehicles which are attacking Ukrainian positions in Shakhova. Ukraine here is defending the territory, trying to return it back. Ukraine is not acting on territory of Russia any longer with its army. Russia acts on territory of Ukraine, trying to occupy it. Not just those regions which Russia put in their constitution illegally, but also Russia attacks in Dnipropetrovsk Oblast, Kharkiv and Sumy regions. It means that Russia has the broader ambitions than just those 4 regions of Ukraine and Crimea. When Donald Trump spoke with Putin the day before yesterday, before his meeting with President Zelensky, Putin told him the same story, that Ukraine should give up the territorial control of Donbas entirely and withdraw the forces. And maybe in this case, Putin might think about the possible ceasefire. How do we know those details? Well, because President Trump said about it to Zelensky and to Ukrainian side in general. Later on it was published by press, some of the details of the talk. So even though then Zelensky agrees on all of the conditions, ceasefire, unconditional one, yeah, on the ground, in the air, in the sea, Russia still wants to get more ground of Ukraine. So there should be talk with Russia, not with Ukraine in this case. But as you saw in this Truth Social post and the rhetorics coming from Donald Trump, he continued to push, as he says, both of the sides. Also, we obtained more details about Putin's and Trump's meeting in Alaska. The Financial Times published a big article about it, and as it was predicted by most of my followers and by me as well, Putin started his conversation with Donald Trump about the unity of Ukraine and Russian people, and that Ukraine is the fake country. He even started from the 9th century, a Rurik dynasty that controlled Rus by the time, Kievskaya Rus, yeah, and also baptizing of Rus and so on. So he started from this madness. Putin is a madman, yes. He lives in his own informational, historical and mental bubble. What we saw in a Tucker Carlson interview back in 2023, as far as I remember, exactly the same narratives Putin started to tell to Donald Trump. An American delegation, it was shocked about that stuff, and Trump even wanted to finish the meeting right away, but they were capable to put it into the different streams, so there was some sort of the confrontation. That's why the vast part of the meeting, after all, including dinner, was cancelled. And Donald Trump, they're planning, as you know already, their next meeting in Budapest. Well, for now it's just a project. It's not yet been coordinated officially, but probably it might happen. Whether Zelensky could be presented on this meeting, I'm sure that Putin will not agree on this meeting if Zelensky is presented there. So there could be a personal meeting between Donald Trump and Putin, and maybe also Orban. Yeah, some people say that it's impossible for Putin to get to Budapest, but for that level of meeting, they're gonna release temporary restrictions on the Russian airplanes and also on Putin himself, because Donny wants it to happen. We see that everyone, Europeans, Ukrainians, Russians, they play with Donny, trying to say how good he really is. Yesterday I got the comments, oh, Zelensky bowed in front of Donald Trump. He didn't bow, he was just pleasant with Donny. That's the strategy of Zelensky, because he doesn't care really about Donny's personality. He wants to obtain the military support for Ukraine, those Tomahawk missiles and something else, like it was with the previous president, direct military support from the United States. It is must-have for Ukraine if we speak about defense, because Europeans, they cannot purchase everything needed for Ukraine. That's why everyone sugarcoats Donald Trump. Europeans, because they need American support in case Russia attacks NATO, and it potentially could be. Many of the European officials and intelligence chiefs, they say about this possible scenario till 2029, till 2030, some say next year, but it could really happen. That's why, yes, Zelensky has to say good things for Donald Trump. As you might remember, they already argued before in Oval Office, and that ruined relations for extensive period of time. So Zelensky actually follows good strategy in this case to speak with that orange idiot. Yes, I may call Donald Trump names because here I tell the things as they are, but I'm not Ukrainian official, so really not at that level even close. Plus, I want to point out my personal opinion on this topic, and I guess the most part of my audience, you agree with me. So what's gonna happen next? Well, Russia will not finish this war. It is already understandable. Russia wants to occupy more Ukrainian territories, and they want to use the meeting with Donald Trump to propel their narratives, to cause Ukraine to surrender territories voluntarily. Those territories which Russia cannot take, even using lots of the military convoy mid-wave attacks. Yeah, basically it's not possible for Russia, even in a close-by perspective, to occupy vast regions of Slavyansk, Kramatorsk, Konstantinivka. Even for Pokrovsk, they are fighting for more than a year already, with just partial success, having all those crazy losses. And for Russia, it cannot continue for such extensive period of time. Despite their size, economy, Russia will have to announce a new mobilization in this case. So Putin tries to avoid it, actually, to proclaim it openly. That's why Donald Trump, for him, is this diplomatic weaponry. And Putin uses it very, very effectively, because it's very easy to play Donald Trump, especially for Putin, with this KGB FSB experience that he applies on incompetent real estate scammer who bankrupted his own businesses and now wants to bankrupt the United States of America. But for Ukraine, the task is the same: to defend itself against the Russian aggression. With Trump's support or without it, there's basically no other choice. Occupation or continue the fight. Those are just the two variants which Ukraine now has, unfortunately. And without American support, if Donald Trump would just exit every sort of the help for Ukraine, well, in this case, Russia would gain more territories and Ukraine will not have enough tools to repel Russian airstrikes. So what Donald Trump could do is just to cause way more losses for Ukrainians, that's it. And partially he's doing it even now, not agreeing on supplies, all of the possible weapons, including Tomahawk missiles. Well, if there is a meeting in Budapest, I expect it to fail almost the same way as it failed in Anchorage, Alaska, because Putin's demands are just not acceptable. First of all, for Ukraine, but America, with Donald Trump, they want to make with Russia deal. Business as usual. That's why they discussed even a tunnel between Chukotka, Russia, and Alaska, United States of America. I mean, seriously, they discussed it. Donald Trump said about it yesterday in a meeting, and he also asked President Zelensky whether he's okay with this idea. Well, Zelensky said, of course not. This proposal was done by Dmitriev actually half a year ago. It became public just 3 days ago, but before they already spoke about this one. And Dmitriev also proposed Elon Musk to finance this construction. Kind of the good supply line for the Russian army. They already mastered those tunnel missions, yeah? Or a tube operation as they call them. And by the way, in Chukotka, Russia, this place is mostly inhabited. I know what they want to connect here, but the infrastructure inside this Russian region, it is just absent. It is not even close to Alaska. This comes from Kirill Dmitriev, who is in charge actually of those negotiations between United States and Russia, economical negotiations to build business, to forget about what is happening in Ukraine. By the way, at the meeting, Pete Hegseth wore the Russian tie. Why is it a Russian tie? Well, because it's called a Russian tie. Russia plain flag tie 2232. He decided to wear it on that meeting. And Zelensky was sitting just in front on the other side of the table. Yeah, just my thoughts on what is happening around, and still I'm positive because Russia has no other choice but to collapse, like every empire of that type. This end is absolutely imminent, but unfortunately for that it might take lots of the time. I mean years and years. Especially that Russia is not being pushed really hard by democracies and mostly pushed by Ukraine itself. So glory to Ukraine. My friends, if you want to support the job that I do here, you may follow me on Patreon, the link for it in the video description just below, or support me on membership of this YouTube channel. Thank you guys for making this content possible. I love you all, and I wish you a peaceful sky wherever you are, and have a great time.